Hi, I'm Mystical McKay, and today I'm going to be reading Chapter 2 of The Disaster Artist, written by Greg Sestero. A beautiful book about how literally anything is fucking possible if you own a very successful pants company. I'm gonna wait a little bit for some of y'all to come in here, and I'm gonna tune into Twitch before we get started. La, 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 la. Let's see here. There I am. Okay, I'm gonna take a swig of this water and we'll get started. Okay? Looks good, sounds good. Perfect. Let's begin. Welcome. I just had the best day of my life, so I'm living my best life, and I hope you are too. Let us begin. This is Chapter 2. La France a gagné, which means La France a gagné. Gagné is win in France. So something about winning French in French. Everybody should have one talent, said from the talented Mr. Ripley. Dickie Greenleaf said that. I saw Home Alone in Walnut Creek, California, on Christmas Day, 1990, when I was 12 years old. After this movie, I immediately got to work on writing the sequel, Home Alone 2, Lost in Disney World. Oh, how cute. The plot hinged on Kevin Macaulay Culkin boarding the wrong plane and winding up in Disney World, where he runs into his slightly old neighbor Drake, Greg Sestero. There, Drake and Kevin get into various monkey shins while avoiding a crack team of bandits recently escaped from Florida at a state, penitentiary. Quite the imagination. I created a soundtrack, I drew up a poster, and threw together a marketing campaign. When I finished the script, I remember thinking that soon I'd be on the set in Orlando and skipping 8th grade. Oh my goodness. Next, I did what all 12-year-old screenwriters do, which was call information and ask for phone numbers of the 20th Century Fox. I got through to someone at Fox, though for some reason I was given the runaround. I called information again and asked for the address of John Hughes' production company in Chicago. Then I sent him my screenplay directly. Next, my mother teased me about my dream of getting my movie made. But that only fueled my aspirations. I checked the mail every day, hoping to prove her wrong. A month later, my mom walked into my bedroom holding a brown envelope. She looked stunned. "It's from the productions," she said. I tore open the package like it was some Willy Wonka golden ticket. Sad news, my screenplay was being returned, but attached to the page was a handwritten note from him himself. Believe in yourself. Holy shit, I just got chills like all over my arms. Whoa. Oh, okay. What the hell? That's beautiful. He told me in closing, have patience. And always follow your heart. Writing a random little boy a note of encouragement was merely a small dashed off kindness in his part. But at the time, it meant so much to me. It still does. In an interview years ago, I learned that many people can afford to be kind. In the intervening years, I've learned that many people can afford to be that kind. but of those who can, most don't. After reading the letter, I knew I had found my calling. I love my mother. She's a wonderful human being. Strong, tough, loving, practical, and beautiful. We get along, and have always gotten along. Save for one key area. My choice in career. The first thing to know about my mother is that she is French, and I'd like you to think for a moment about the temperamental implications of that gene. I said French Sicilian. I didn't even see the Sicilian part. So she's a mix between the two. Yikes. So I said, I'd like you to think for a moment about the temperamental implications of this genetic combination. My mother wanted to become a Rhodes Scholar, a lawyer, a doctor. Wanted me to become a Rhodes Scholar, or a lawyer, or a doctor. For my mother, saying, I want to be an actor, was roughly along the lines of, I would like to be homeless. Which is so funny after the conversation I just had, but that's a whole other... That's funny. That hits home. Oddly, or not oddly at all, my mother had once wanted to be an opera singer. If it were that easy, she said. When I asked about it, she said, I would have done it. Bitch. In retrospect, that was the way that my mother was about discouraging me with acting. Tactically speaking, was all wrong. She could have sat me down and said, Greg, look, this is an incredibly hard thing to do. And even many of the most talented actors barely survive. You might be great and still not make it. Is that the kind of chance you want to take? But she didn't say that. What she did say was, you're going to learn the hard way, and the worst part is that you had your parents to warn you, unlike all of those other loser Hollywood runaways you see in the streets. Oh my God, this is hitting home. I'm kind of metaphorically shitting my pants right now. Wow. That is so funny. Okay. It was hard to hear this from her. My mother was one of the only people that I wanted to be proud of me. With my dad, it was different. His ideas of solid parenting had always been to say, just do what you can enjoy, because it sure goes by fast. But with my father so low-key, my mother's voice was dominating. Most people have nothing to lose, she would tell me. Gregory, you have a lot to lose. Oh my God. It would end up feeling like, which meant I lost a lot. I didn't go out for high school drama, for instance, because I was afraid of not being good. Oh, yeah, I didn't go for drama in high school because I was afraid of not being good. I persisted in reading about acting, though, and remembering my stomach drop when I heard that Jack Nicholson stumbled through 350 auditions before getting his first small part. Wow. That's pretty crazy. I was fear-stifled, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. It was in my junior year. I didn't apply to colleges. I didn't have a plan, because nothing felt right. It was around this time that I watched another movie that had a huge influence on me. Legends of the Fall. I believe that Tristan Ludlow, Brad Pitt, was on a quest for self-understanding similar to mine. Through mine, I hoped I would have had fewer bear attacks, though. The morning after I saw the film, I noticed an ad. A San Francisco talent agency was seeking new clients, and I decided to send them some of my photos. After a couple of weeks, someone from the Stars called me for a meeting. A month and a half later, Stars had gotten me a gig to model. This overlapped with what had been the beginning of my senior year of high school. I worked at an ad of independent study with my school, and suddenly I was landing an airport and blinking. Well, I was landing from the airport and blinking in the glorious Italian sunshine. Oh my God. I'm gonna get Italy. I can go off to a frantic start, attending the casting all over the city, many of which had 400 models waiting for hours in line to be seen. This was about as intimidating as anything I could have possibly imagined. For the first time, though, I didn't let my fear control me. Wow. And just because I was sheltered did not mean that I wasn't good. It didn't mean I should quit. That being said, I was greatly rattled by the beauty of the Italian women and the alien qualities of the fashion world as seen through the eyes of a 17-year-old California boy who wanted to act. I made this mistake of voicing this aspiration to fashion people. I'm doing this to act. I'd say, you should be doing this to model. I was told, rightly, too. Every moment of every day felt new, fresh, and incredible. I did shoots in Florence, and on my days off, I hung out with other young models. In Paris, I got the chance to work for Jean Paul, and I met the fashion editor for Vanity Fair, who playfully asked me, "Your mom let you out of the house?" Not exactly, I didn't say. After 6 months in Europe, I returned home to San Francisco, and I did not plan on modeling again because I wanted to focus on acting exclusively. Models, I knew, had a hard time being taken seriously as actors, sometimes for very good reasons. I asked my print agent, Lisa, if she would submit me for whatever movies or television shows were filming in the Bay Area. She found this amusing. It sort of sounds, Greg, like you want to fly up the ladder. Lisa reminded me that many things I didn't have: an acting resume, an acting headshot, or any training. But I was adamant that she try anyway. To Lisa and my shock, I quickly scored a bit part in Nash Brides as Joel, an upset guy who's seen a murder. After I got sides, I spent 3 days throwing everything I had into them. My 2 lines in the scene were yes and no. That's it, I thought. My break. My rocket starts up the ladder. Except that it wasn't. Phil Jackson, my sports hero, once said, "It wasn't the last hit that broke the rock, but the thousands of hits that came before it." Damn. So true. So true. Oh, goodness. Where did I go? My part on Nash Brides was one tiny hit. I shot that part in Oakland with Don Johnson himself. During the shoot, I met the actor named Peter Gregory, who was up from Los Angeles doing a guest star turn on the show. We talked a bit on set. Gregory offered me some Big Brother type advice, and he told me that I had a young Rob Lowe thing going on in my favor. A kind of likable innocence, and that if I wanted to do well, I had to figure out a way to give that aspect of myself some kind of edge. You don't want to just be another pretty face. He said, "Pretty boys are a dime a dozen in LA." The most helpful thing Peter mentioned was the name of his agent, Judy Schoon, which I filed away for immediate use. My scheme? Call her and say, "Hello, Peter Gregory recommended you to me," which was only slightly a lie. Peter told me I shouldn't have any trouble attracting a Los Angeles agent, so why not start with this one? when I came home and I told my mother I was going to send out feelers with LA agents, she said, if you do that, this is literally hilarious. Like the conversation I just had. If you do that, if you go to LA, mon cher, then you're on your own. I'm not helping you at all. Thank you. Before I could contact Judy Schoon, I booked a few things that you would need a high-power microscope to see me in. These parts are called being a background performer, in polite company, and being a fucking extra. If you're talking to other actors. One such gig was Gattaca, the Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman sci-fi movie directed by Andrew Nicole, in which a briefly flash of my face can be seen within The Wanted Citizens. I was also a featured extra in my favorite movie language contradiction in terms in Metro, which starred Eddie Murphy and Michael Rappaport. The on-set casting person plucked me from a teeming mass of extras and stuck me right behind Murphy for a scene in a tavern that would end up getting cut. Shortly after my background performing triumph in Metro, I called Judy Schoon. To her credit, she actually took my call. I explained that I had recently done Nash Bridges with her client, Peter Gregory. Soon I'd be coming down in Los Angeles, and I'd love to meet with her. Well, she said, in a hard-ass, cigarette-y voice, don't come down here just for me. I drove down a few days later, just for her. Judy turned out to be an unexpectedly kind person. The first thing you need, she told me, is to get tape. Also training. You need to get asked. What if I asked you to intensify a scene? Would you know what I meant? I didn't answer. I thought so, she said. Come back to me with tape and training under your belt and we'll talk. I went back to San Francisco with I've got to get tape. I've got to get training running through my head like numbers on a stock exchange ticket. I enrolled in classes at the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, whose alumni included Denzel Washington, Terry Hatcher, Winona Ryder, and Danny Glover. Then I got as many jobs as possible because my eventual move to Los Angeles was not going to be cheap. I ushered a Golden Gate Theater, and I shuffled papers in an investment firm. I filed documents at my father's land development company. I'd been studying at ACT for 6 months when I called Julie again to update her on my progress. I didn't get her directly, so I left a message. The next day, I walked by my father's office and I saw him talking on the phone. From the startled way he looked up, I knew the conversation he was having involved me. Yeah, my father kept saying. Yeah, I know. She's screwed up. I agree. I wouldn't deal with her. I'll let him know. He put the phone down. Whatever this was, it was bad. Dad? I said. His eyes lifted heavily to meet mine. Your mother talked to the agent. She said Mom was rude or harassing to her assistant. So now she doesn't want to hear from you anymore. So it's over. You need to let it go. My mother, being French, can ruffle and alarm people. Not accustomed to more, shall we say, Gallic forms of no-nonsense directness. It's not rude. It's not intended to be rude. But try telling that to Judy Schoon's assistant, who called me back and got to my mother. She pretty rapidly found herself being shouted at, and then shouting right back. The whole debate ended, I later learned, with Judy herself getting on the phone and telling my mother, "Don't ever fucking call my office again. I'm not interested in your son." Bitch! Oh, hell no. I'd spent the last 6 months doing everything that I could to get represented by Judy Schoon, and it had all collapsed in one 30-second conversation. I went home immediately and confronted my mother, who had an interesting appraisal for the day's events. Her first point was that Hollywood people, as she long argued, were flakes and thieves. Her second point was that this was exactly the sort of thing that she had been warning me about. Her third point was that Hollywood did not work in the way the rest of the world works. You need to have connections, rely on the casting coach, or be rich. I, in turn, had one point, which I repeated to her again and again. She should have let me return the phone call and not taken it upon herself to torch the one connection that I had. Other than that, I had nothing to say. Soon enough, neither did she. Several weeks later, my mother was driving my brother to Los Angeles for a dental school interview. She offered a spot in the car for me so I could meet with some Hollywood agents. I knew this was her way of apologizing. Bitch. I went, despite being unable to make any appointments with any agents. By referral only is basically the model of every legitimate agency in Los Angeles. Thus, operating out of complete hopelessness, I decided to crash the offices of a promising talent agent I knew, mainly because they represented Mark Hamill. My hope was that every law known to govern the entertainment industry would cease to exist for the few minutes that I was there. My crash of CED's office was exactly as it should have gone. Did I have an appointment or referral? I didn't, and I was asked to leave. I began to make a case for myself and heard my voice develop a worrying quiver, so I stopped, nodded, and walked out. A month later, I got an unexpected bit of good news when my San Francisco agency booked me for 2 commercials. One of them was for Ford, in which I portrayed a college guy hanging out with his girl. A Ford truck goes by and it's amazing. We wave at it. It made no sense, but it got me. It got my SAG card and a few residual checks, which was helpful. Less hopeful were my classes at ACT. The students didn't get a lot of time on stage, and the place had an intimidating vibe. So I asked around, where else did people seek training in San Francisco? One name that kept coming was Jean Shelton. I went to see her, and after a short conversation, she let me in. It's now April 1998. I'm not alive. I was almost 20 years old. After a week in Shelton's classes, the good news kept coming. I got a call from the casting director working with Tom Shadyic, I have no clue how to say that guy's last name, on a film called Patch Adams. Robin Williams was the star. Ooh. The casting director had seen my headshot and thought that I might be right for a character who didn't have any dialogue but would be a prominent feature in several funeral scenes. Close up, and the dead girl's grief-stricken brother in those scenes. I was cast and drove out to Napa Valley. My mother didn't understand why I was driving so far for a scene where I had no lines. I arrived to the town where we were shooting around 7 a.m. I was given my funeral wardrobe. That is really hard to say. Funeral wardrobe. Out of nowhere, my name was called out over the loudspeaker, and the line producer incredibly wanted to speak to me. She said she thought it would be good for me to talk to Robin, because I was a member of his on-screen family. A little intimacy, she said, might be nice. Robin Williams is a longtime resident of San Francisco. I grew up watching him on local television. I thought he might find it funny if I greeted him by referencing one of his local bits. An odd character named Handsome Williams, who he created right about the time of Mork and Mindy. When I approached him, he slowly paced a few feet from his trailer. The line producer walked ahead of me, sped up to prepare William for my arrival. I was about to talk to an actor whose work I admired and who had gone only weeks ago, won an Oscar for Good Will Hunting. When I got close, he smiled and stuck out his hand. Handsome Williams, I said, exactly, smiling, as I shook his large, hairy loaf of a hand. He stared at me blankly. Handsome? He said. He stopped shaking my hand. He had no idea what I was referring to. He was too focused on the scene that he was about to shoot to remember some goofy old bit that he once did. Handsome Williams, I said again, unhelpfully. I felt all the soft parts of my face get blood, gushingly warm. William let go of my hand, gracefully putting the misunderstanding behind us. He began to explain to me in a very calm voice that the scene we were shooting today was an intensely emotional part of the film for him. My job, consequently, was to stand there and radiate sadness. He was very kind and actually pretty helpful. And after some polite chit-chat, he thanked me for being part of the film and walked off. I was shot in the mark on which I was supposed to stand for the duration of the scene. Next to me was a guy I mistakenly assumed was another extra. In fact, he was a young actor that I had just never heard of, though he had already done terrific work. I tried to make a little small talk with him, but he was also in the zone. Or trying to get there and sent back my way some palpable energy indicating that I should just shut the fuck up already. Which I did. The director suddenly appeared and walked back and forth in front of us, occasionally suggesting a few micro arrangements. He was very cool, in a rich, hippie kind of way. He also had already done a few huge movies, Ace Ventura among them, but carried himself in such a manner that his authority always seemed pleasant and gentle. Imagine that. Eventually, he zeroed into me. I'm going to go a little bit tighter on him, he said to someone. And then, we're going to do a little bit more with him later. Then he spoke to me directly. Really great, Greg, he said. Thank you. By now I knew enough not to say anything. Not even a thank you for remembering my name, which truly was above and beyond. I just nodded. After we finished shooting, I drove around, and instead of going home, I had been a contentment featured extra. Nothing more, nothing less, but it was enough. And I felt like I had done something real. I stood still and looked appropriately grief-hammered, and our director got exactly what he wanted from me. A few weeks before, I'd been ready to give up. Maybe I wasn't crazy to need to do this. As if in validation of my reborn drive, a bunch of auditions came in all at once, including one for Trip Fontaine in The Virgin Suicide. The character Josh Hartnett wound up playing. My audition tape was forward on the Los Angeles casting director, who told me my agent thought I had something that she could use down the line. Down the line. Shortly after this, a San Francisco casting director whom I'd read for a few times brought me in for another part, and she said, I don't know what you're doing, but every time you come in here, you're getting better. Keep it up. But nothing happens, and nothing keeps happening. You know you're in somewhat dire personal strats when the best news of the month is that the French have won the World Cups on July 13th, 1998. 2 days before my 20th birthday, I walked in to Jean Shelton's class. I was still buzzing. France had won the World Cup. Why wasn't anyone else as excited as I was about this? It turned out that someone was my classmate, Murad, a young French-speaking guy. After class started, I heard him say in a whisper, "La France a gagné." France won. So I was getting confused. I thought it was saying the French, but then I saw that it said specifically France. So, France won. La France a gagné. I had spoken French with him a few times and figured that he was talking to me. I winced around in my seat, but he wasn't talking to me. He was trying to address, another guy to his left who was sitting alone, several seats away. This guy had a rather pirate-type face and presence with a sour expression and a long, messy black hair. The pirate just stared at him. The France had won was evidently of no immediate concern to this guy. Yeah, right, the pirate said. La France a gagné. Then he looked back at the stage. It was a very strange reaction. His accent, at least from what I could hear, didn't quite sound French. When he obviously knew how to do it and how to speak. He looked older in everything but his attitude. He said that he sat in his seat like a slouchy teenager in detention. The more closely I studied him, the odder he appeared. He seemed half comic book character, half hair mental icon. Was this guy French? If so, why was he so indifferent about France's victory? I had no idea how significant this moment would be in my life. This was the first time I saw the man who would call himself Tommy Wiseau. Pirate character. And that's the end of this chapter. Tommy Wiseau. You guys. Oh, it's 11:11 there. Make a wish. That's that. That is chapter 2 of The Disaster Artist. What do you think? I loved it. Yay! Sorry that I was a little late, you guys. I had some drama that I needed to participate in before I could come home and drop in here, but I got to it and I finished it, so yay me. Thank you for listening if you did, and I hope you enjoyed it. Chapter 3 will be next week on Sunday as well. And chapter 3 is called Do You Have Some Secrets? Hell yeah. Super exciting. Awesome. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed this. I know I did. It was a good book. A chapter. It was a good chapter. I enjoyed it. It's very funny. Alright. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. I'm gonna get into comfy clothing and brush my teeth and go to sleep. So good night. Have a wonderful rest of your night. And I'll see you tomorrow for Monday meditation.